Hello and welcome to Translation of Light Astrology. Today's episode is called Connected to the Moon, David Lynch, Lilith, Hekate, and the Black Dog. So what you see here are a couple of quotes from David Lynch from about 15 years ago. This weekend, I'm going to try to find out if I'm connected to the moon. And then he wrote afterwards, I'm pretty sure I'm connected to the moon. And indeed, out of curiosity, I did a little look into his chart and some transits to see how he might be connected to the moon. This is sponsored spiritually, at least, by Bob's Big Boy Restaurant, which is one of Lynch's favorite places to eat and work. This is Translation of Light Astrology, Connected to the Moon, Episode 4. Please like and subscribe and help the channel to grow. So, 262876, David Lynch. Interestingly, Mr. Lynch had an asteroid named after him. And I believe it was named the day after his 61st birthday. Interestingly, there was a moon connection here because the moon was at 6 Pisces at the time, opposing Lynch's natal moon at 5 Virgo. So right there's a connection. But what I discovered was that this David Lynch asteroid was actually conjunct Black Moon Lilith when he died by less than a degree, also in his whole sign first house of identity. So there seems to be a connection to the moon for Lynch. Black Moon Lilith is the point in space where the moon is farthest away from the Earth at its apogee. And if we think of the traditional significations of the moon as being home, safety, mother, nurturing, um, but being very far away, not in and not with the earth and taking care of it, but kind of out on its own in the dark of space, the cold of space. It starts to give me an image of Lynch because Lynch is an amazing American surrealist, and he's got this combination of the uncanny in the everyday, the kind of the dark magic of a diner or a small town, and finding really weird, absurd things under the most mundane everyday experiences. So there's a clear connection here between David Lynch and the moon. And this is, I'm using, just to be technical, some outer space points. We have both a true measurement and a mean measurement, an average measurement. This is using the true measurement where the point actually was in space. Later on, I'm going to be using the mean as well. So you can see here Lilith with the snake. Lilith was is a complicated mythological figure, supposed to be Adam's first wife, who refused to obey him, went into exile, and then got a lot of sort of demonic projection onto her around feminine sexuality and power. And you can see the snake, the end of the Eve. She basically um, voluntarily left Eden, which is a really interesting kind of thing. Interestingly, Lynch's daughter, Jennifer Lynch, created a movie which is not well regarded called Hiss, also known as Nagin, the Snake Woman. Just thought that was kind of interesting. Um, Now, if we go back, David Lynch, again, he is described himself as a Eagle Scout from Missoula, Montana, also a filmmaker. He passed away the morning of January 16th, 2025, at his daughter's house in Los Angeles. Well, let's look at his natal chart. Interestingly, and again, there's a little bit of Lynchian fuzziness or strangeness about this. There's also a connection to Black Moon Lilith, although it's not the true Black Moon Lilith here. Here it's the mean Black Moon Lilith, which if I was going to be rigorous, I would say, oh, I'm cheating. But no, thinking of getting into the Lynchian mind frame, it's more about there's a meaningful connection here rather than a purely rational one. So you can see here, we've got an even tighter conjunction. He was born when he incarnated when the mean, the average Black Moon Lilith position was 6 minutes from his ascendant. So this is an incredibly tightly tight chart, tight connection. He was a night chart, so the moon is also his sect light. So there's another connection to the moon there. Um, let's see here. So let's talk about Lilith. So yeah, I mentioned a little bit about Lilith. I'm using some images here from his works, mainly Twin Peaks. Here's a painting called Lady Lilith by the Pre-Raphaelite Dante Gabriel Rossetti, and also a still of Laura Palmer from Twin Peaks, Fire Walk with Me. Again, kind of a interesting juxtaposition. So what are the significations here of Black Moon Lilith? According to Joëlle de Gravelaine in Lilith und das Loslassen, during my years of astrological practice, I have come to use the dark moon in all my chart analyses as a complement to interpreting the moon. It would never occur to me to neglect this influence. The dark moon describes our relationship to the absolute, to sacrifice as such, and shows how we let go. In transit, the dark moon indicates some form of castration or frustration, frequently in the areas of desire, powerlessness of the psyche, or general inhibition, which seems to sort of fit with his asteroid being conjuncted the day he died. On the other hand, it shows where we question ourselves, our lives, our jobs, and our beliefs. I feel this is important since it gives us the opportunity to let go of something. The dark moon shows where we can let the whole flow into ourselves without putting an I in the way, without putting up a wall in the form of ego. At the same time, it doesn't indicate passivity. On the contrary, it symbolizes the firm will to be open and trusting, to let the greater world flow through one, relying entirely on the great laws of the universe, on that which we name God. To prepare us for this opening, the dark moon creates a necessary void. And I think necessary void, this is a really starting to also, here's an image of an owl traditionally also associated with the moon from Twin Peaks. But there's something about his work that is talking about voids, mysterious interzones, and liminal spaces where the ego, the current conscious mind, the sense of human order and control is warped and broken down, and insight can come through that. Pointless and completely delusional dreams. So I've been, William Lilly is an astrologer from the 17th century, master of horary, and his famous work, Christian Astrology from 1647, is 3 volumes. The first 2 cover horary with a lot of examples and instruction, and the third one is less well known, and it covers nativities. And I've actually been going through it. It's written in 17th century English in a style that with a lot of outdated words. It's got a lot of great information, but it's a little hard to follow for me. So I've been rewriting that. And here is part of Lilly's chapter 143 on the native's dreams. So I will be publishing this soon. And if you're interested, you can get a copy. So what Lilly says is we look to the 9th house to learn about the native's dreams. So Jupiter or Venus there, strong and not afflicted, usually show meaningful dreams that have corresponding effects, meaning there's some connection between the dream and what happens in life, the manifestation. If they're weak or very afflicted, it indicates ambiguous and unreliable dreams, which sometimes prove true and other times false. Malefics there indicate pointless and completely delusional dreams. Lynch has both malefics in the 9th house, Saturn and Mars. He also says if there are no planets in the 9th, then consider the sign of the house and its lord and decide based on its quality and disposition. So let's look at how Lilly, again, this is my rewriting into more modern English, types of dreams by significator. So Lynch's 9th house is in Cancer, which is where the American sun is. Cancer, mom, home, and apple pie, right? How many diner scenes with pie and coffee does Lynch have in his work? Very domestic surrealism. So the moon is the ruler of Cancer. So Lilly says this indicates water, sailing, being busy, dangers at sea, flying through the air. But if Saturn is with her, the most horrible dreams. And what do Saturn and Mars signify? gloomy matters and people. For example, farmers, crude things, digging up the ground, finding treasures in caves under the earth, dark places, deserts, tombs, devils, spirits, and scary things that inspire fear and horror. And Mars signifies arguments, fights, hatreds, brawls, horses, war, burning houses, and hunting. And so, of course, I said to myself, let's take a look at through some of Lynch's work and see if these things show up in his dreams. His work is definitely dreamlike. So we have gloomy places, and there's a digging of a hole in the ground. We have a farmer. We have dark places. We have deserts and war. We have tombs. This seems devilish to me. I'm going to say we have the devil. We have horrible things, scary people, fights, horses, bu- buildings on fire, dogs, hunting, flying, and horrible things. Now, Lynch, interestingly, wrote a book called Catching the Big Fish. He was a devotee of transcendental meditation for decades, and he had a lot of interesting things to say about this and how it fit into his creative process. So, in this book, Lynch wrote, like little fish swim on the surface, but the big ones swim down below. If you can expand the container you're fishing in, your consciousness, you can catch bigger fish. Here's how it works. Inside every human being is an ocean of pure, vibrant consciousness. When you transcend in transcendental meditation, you dive down into that ocean of pure consciousness. You splash into it, and it's bliss. You can vibrate with this bliss. Experiencing pure consciousness enlivens it, expands it, it starts to unfold and grow. And remember the signification I was sharing before about Black Moon Lilith, the necessary void, the kind of, abandonment of ego and creating space for perhaps a revelation, something beyond human, supernatural, uncanny. Black as coffee on a moonless night. So this is from Twin Peaks season 1, episode 2. Pete Martell's pouring coffee. Mr. Cooper, how do you take it? FBI Special Agent Dale Cooper, black as midnight on a moonless night. Pete Martell says, pretty black. Another moon reference. And interestingly, the moon, one of the many significations of the moon is milk. And do you see that he's saying, I don't want milk in my coffee. I want it black as a moonless night, which is again echoing this idea of Black Moon Lilith being distant, far away from the earth, not softening or sweetening the blackness of coffee. The overflowing cup. So Austin Coppock in 36 Faces writes that the Cancer 3 decan is the overflowing cup. Uh, and he writes, a curious fragment from the Hellenistic era, the 36 heirs of the zodiac, attributes this decan to the dark goddess Hekate, a mysterious goddess of the underworld in classical Greek lore. She was before that a Thracian goddess. Hecate was accorded power over all the realms of creation, both the living and the dead. She was most often attended by hounds. The secrets of the underworld were hers, and she has long been considered the patron of witches. Her relation to the theme of this face is clear, for she is both a nurturer of Kurotrophos and a destroyer, granting wealth to one while inflicting terrible poverty onto another. So you can see here a depiction of Hecate. You can see she's associated with witchcraft, the night, moon, ghosts, necromancy, and Saturn and Mars are conjunct by 1 minute in the third decan of Cancer in Lynch's natal chart. And so this is the moon's decan. So she's connected to the search for Persephone in the underworld. Flaming torches, the abducted young woman, kind of gives me Laura Palmer vibes. And she's the dog is traditionally a symbol of this psychopomp that can travel and bring spirits, guide spirits from the earth down to the underworld. Which leads us to the angriest dog in the world. So between 1983 and 1992, Lynch wrote a comic strip for the LA Reader called The Angriest Dog in the World. He described it as a dog who is so angry he cannot move, he cannot eat, he cannot sleep, can just barely growl. Bound so tightly with tension and anger, he approaches a state of rigor mortis. So what do we have here? We have a dog, right? He can't do lunar things. He can't eat. He can't sleep. He can just barely growl. So when he says bound so tightly with tension and anger, he approaches the state of rigor mortis, that's a pretty good description of Mars conjunct Saturn by 1 minute. In Cancer, the home. So he's in a home, he's in the yard, but he's paralyzed by sort of malefic forces. Interestingly, Lynch used the same art for every strip, only changing the word balloons. Lynch often employed dogs in his films. One of Mars' significations is dogs. Like Mars, they both defend and attack. And Lynch's natal Mars is being held in a death grip by Saturn restriction in Cancer, the home. And there's many examples in Wild and Heart and Eraserhead of dogs. And dogs were Hecate's best known companions. They were offered to her as sacrifices. Her hellhounds were seen as guarding the gates to the underworld. She's also viewed as having a canine form herself in some of the writings, either as a single dog or even as a triple-headed one. Black dogs, in particular, here's a black dog, were symbolic of Hekate in ancient times. Like in the section from the spell to the waning moon in the Greek magical papyri, her fillet, key, wand, iron wheel, and black dog. So as mentioned before, Lynch's natal ascendant is 18 Scorpio, 15 minutes. There's a book called the Astrologicon, or Astrological Optics, published in 1665 by John Gadbury. It's an English translation of Johann Engel's Astrolabium Planum of 1488. And in the Astrolabium, Engel provides a decan-like image and interpretation for every ascendant degree for every sign in a nativity. And for the 19th degree, Scorpio ascending, Gadbury writes, in my words, my rendition, 19 Scorpio, a dog with large mouth and ears, a noble person. So dog with large mouth and ears reminded me of the angriest dog in the world, and I would say Lynch seemed like a rather noble person. The moon's glow. So there's a David Lynch Theater YouTube channel, and it has a video called David Lynch Theater Presents The Moon's Glow. And what it is Lynch is overdubbing surreal dialogue over old movie film. So here's a sample of one of them. I'm going to sit down and listen to each track over and over during the day as the sun drifts across the sky, and then into the night as the music makes friends with the moon's glow. So again, laying it on thick. Yes, connected to the moon. He knew it. We know it. So there's a really nice blog by Stephen Miller with an article called "Setting the Stage: The Moon Over Twin Peaks," which is a collection of shots of the moon from the show. I recommend checking it out because Lynch was using the moon prominently as a visual motif and plot point, including a moon puzzle box decorated with moon phases and astrological sign glyphs. Interestingly, there are only 8 sign glyphs on the box, and the glyphs are in an appropriately Lynchian order, reading counterclockwise from the assumed ascendant position. The signs read Taurus, Sagittarius, Aries, a symbol that looks like an animal's paw, Cancer, Pisces, Libra, and Gemini. So I had mentioned before the day that Lynch died, his name asteroid was at 3 degrees Scorpio and 33 minutes. So something, pinged me about, hey, wait a minute, 333, that seems like might there be some numerology, there's some association. Did a search, David Lynch 333, and this is what came up. There was this artist, Key Ahrens, created a print of David Lynch for a magazine, and it was a signed edition of 333 prints. this is sort of, I don't know, the moment of astrology, the divination thing. Again, not a logical connection, but maybe a meaningful connection. And there's a sort of a sub nod in here in that this was called Flood Magazine. This print was for Flood Magazine. My mother's maiden name was Flood. The mother is the moon. So we're back to that. And flood, of course, water symbolism. So I would say, RIP David Lynch, thank you for exploring this uncanny necessary void that lies in our everyday experience. Creamed corn and the workings of the universe. So the famous character Log Lady has a voiceover in episode 9 where she says, as above, so below, the human being finds himself or herself in the middle. There is as much space outside the human proportionally as inside. Stars, moons, and planets remind us of protons, neutrons, and electrons. Is there a bigger being walking with all the stars within? Does our thinking affect what goes on outside us and what goes on inside us? I think it does. Where does creamed corn figure into the workings of the universe? What really is creamed corn? Is it a symbol for something else? Here's a list of works cited in this video. You can definitely continue on the journey. I got a sense that there's a lot more to uncover in Lynch's astrology there's a lot of, I just started pulling on this thread and a lot of interesting things came up. I am Translation of Light Astrology. If you would like a reading, I have a website, translationoflight.org. I also maintain a huge archive of astrological images at translationoflight.bluesky.social. And thank you for joining me for episode 4 of Translation of Light, David Lynch Connected to the Moon. I hope you enjoyed it. Would love to hear any comments or feedback or any Lynchian astrological connections you may have noticed yourself. Thank you.